Yeah, thank you very much, Jackie. Good morning, everybody. I am Phil Thoden. I serve as the staff president for the Austin chapter of the Associated General Contractors. We are a trade association for commercial builders located in Austin, and we're one of 89 chapters of the AGC across the country. Um, I have we are a trade association, but I like to say that we're actually a community of commercial builders who work in Austin and throughout Central Texas. Trade association is kind of a wonky term, and the construction industry is a people industry. So in our construction community, we have 275 company members. Um, about half of those are general contractors and specialty contractors, companies large, medium, and small. The remaining half of the companies tend to be suppliers and service providers, employing about 10,000 people or so in the local area. I have served in this role for 20 years, and I'm really excited about our partnership with Mercator. And before turning it over to Chloe, the CEO and founder of Mercator.ai, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why we here at the Austin-AGC are partnering with Mercator and why we think it makes sense and why we think it's going to be a great opportunity for folks working in Austin and throughout Texas. So in the 20 years that I've served in my role as staff president, the two most frequently asked questions of me are one, hey, Phil, when is the next Austin-AGC social or networking event, right? Because it's a people industry. People in our industry love to get together and reaffirm old friendships, get to know new people, talk about jobs that they're working on, talk about jobs that are coming up in the pipeline. It's all part of their business development process, right? The second question I'm most frequently asked is, hey, Phil, I was driving around Austin today, and there's a plot of land that has been completely empty and inactive, but now there's construction fencing around it. Do you happen to know who is building on that job site or what they're building? And, I may know off the top of my head, but frankly, there is so much work going on in Austin right now that it may be like, even a 10-story building. And I have no idea what it is because Austin is just growing that rapidly and there's that much construction. So the good news is that there is an information source for finding out building permits and site use development permits in Austin. The bad news is that those sites, it's a city permit portal, and they have a property profile portal as well. Those sites are very, very clunky to use. They require a lot of input. Often the output is not what you're looking for or doesn't exist at all. It's a very, very frustrating process that requires a lot of time and a lot of mental capital. So I've been looking years ago at that permit information because it is publicly available. It's updated every 24 hours and it's downloadable into an Excel spreadsheet. So I got looking at all the columns that are populated. Two of the columns are latitude and longitude. And I got to thinking, okay, if we have that information and we know exactly in Austin where these permits are being issued or for projects on those locations, we should be able to layer over a map of the city of Austin and maybe have pins showing where those permits are that you can then click on and quickly get information about what's being built, who's doing the building, what's their contact information, maybe have a link to go into the city of Austin's permit portals and get more information like architects renderings or specifications, et cetera. Take a look at who the owner is and other data. So in September of 2022, about a year and a half ago, the Austin-AGC, we launched what's known as the Build It Permits app. And you can go to your Apple App Store, you can go to your Google App Store, search Build It Permits, download this app, and it will populate a map of the city of Austin with all the active building permits that have been issued in the last year. And over the course of the last year and a half, without a lot of marketing or fanfare, just kind of word of mouth, putting it in information in our newsletter, putting information on our social media, we've picked up almost 400 registered users, and I talked to a lot of them. And I tell them, listen, this is a 1.0 app. We didn't want to spend a whole lot of money before seeing if there was an interest in it. Turns out there is a significant interest in this information. And the people I talk to say things like, we love it, but we want it to be even more robust. We want better search capabilities. We would love to have like a blue dot on the map showing you exactly where you are, like it does on Google Maps, things like that. So all that being said, fast forward to March of this year, I attended the National Agency of America's convention, and there was a lot of talk there about AI and how AI can make the construction industry more efficient, whether it's with permits or other vast amounts of information that are exchanged in the industry on a routine basis. And so I came back to Austin and I was thinking, okay, how can we use AI to make our app even more robust? What other information is out there that's publicly available or just generally available that would be of interest to our construction company members that we can, at the AGC here, make intelligible and actionable for them? And as I was thinking about all this, I got an email from Chloe, CEO and founder of Mercator.ai, and she said, Phil, I'm going to be in Austin. And somebody told me you'd be a good person for me to talk to about Mercator.ai. So she came in, and I think within 5 minutes of her talking to me, I think my jaw probably hit the floor because I realized that her head and my head are in the exact same space. We're both trying to take all this information that's out there uh, with regard to construction permitting and make it intelligible and actionable for the industry. So it was very clear to me, it was very clear to Chloe that, hey, this is going to be a great relationship. And she's going to come on now. She's going to talk about her experience in starting Mercator.ai and talk a little bit about some of the benefits that are going to be available for AGC members who want to subscribe to Mercator.ai, and also talk about some ways that we're talking about improving the app to make it a 2.0 app, the Build It Permits app. So that will be a really cool part of this process as well. So Chloe, with that, I'm going to turn it on over to you and let you talk about Mercator.ai.
Well, I gotta say, first off, thank you so much, Phil. Appreciate the opportunity. And thank you everyone for joining. We have 38 people on this call, 47 registered. So really, really excited to have such a broad audience today. Like Phil mentioned, when we connected back in April, we just had kind of a serendipitous moment where both of us had been thinking about the same thing, about the same kind of how do we map the market of construction so that we can understand what's happening holistically in the industry. And really, that journey for me started with my dad. I come from a construction family. My dad prides himself on his relationships, and that was always the conversation around the dinner table. And as I kind of grew up and started working in industry, what I started to recognize and realize, and the time I was working in the marketing and advertising space, what I started to realize was, oh my goodness, my father has, the entire, at the time he had about 80% of the revenue that was being generated for his company was based on his relationships. And how absolutely fragile is that system, especially knowing that one day he will step out of that industry, he will retire, as well as his relationships will retire as well. And so as we started to see more and more, conversations about labor shortages and fewer people entering the market, and how do we use AI to kind of force multiply or accelerate what we can do as individuals, with the capacity that we have, how can we use that in this industry? And so what we started to look at was, how do we use the data that's getting produced by construction projects as they develop over time, whether that be, a real estate developer interested in purchasing land or investing in real estate, through to, tenants taking occupancy in a building and ultimately wanting to do a tenant improvement. And so as we started to dig in and really speak to the construction industry and understand what is that problem at its core, this big idea of, the fact that the industry is a bit of a black box started to really appear. In fact, I was just speaking with someone in San Francisco that was telling me that, they had spent about a year trying to understand the market through webinars and through Google searching and just trying to piece together kind of who's doing what work with who and how are relationships changing and what's hot in the market right now, what's coming up. And so and verbatim told me, the industry is a black box. If the clients aren't working with us, if the spend's not happening with us, it's very difficult for us to understand, who's getting ready to build, who's about to build, what's coming up. And so we rely quite heavily on our relationships. We rely quite heavily on word of mouth, and the few tools that we have in market. And so that's really where the genesis of Mercator came from, was this idea of how do we use, we're in an industry now where we're producing data by the second. How do we use that data to map the market and actually understand how relationships are shifting and changing, what work is coming out? And that's really what I want to showcase today for everyone here. Is it's not necessarily a Mercator sales pitch, whatever. This is about how can you rethink about the way that you might want to use, this new wave of technology that's coming through to be able to be smarter at the projects that you select, but then also at when do you build which relationships with who, and how do you get in front of ultimately building the relationships that are going to drive value both for your clients, and then ultimately for yourselves as well. And so that's where we really looked at Mercator as how do we digitize word of mouth in construction, right? We take our brokers out for drinks. We sign up for tools that tell us about project releases. We do cold calling. We go to conferences. We play golf, as I'm sure you've seen us mention many times over. And my goal is not to get rid of your golf games, I promise. But it's about turning this 6 to 8 week process of trying to kind of red string and figure out, who's doing what work with who, and really just simplify that flow, that deal flow into your inbox so that you know of every project that's relevant to you, that's coming up exactly at the time that makes sense for you. You have all the information in place. You're not spending hours digging for research. You have the company profile, so you know everything else they've got going on so that you can speak to more than just one project, and we'll show you that today. And then ultimately get to contact information so that you can go and make a meaningful connect. Because at the end of the day, like, our jobs are not research. Our jobs are building trust, building relationships, solving problems. And that's what we want to get your teams, to faster. And so one of the last things I'll talk about here before we jump into an actual demo is how we're built on real-time solid data. And this is one of the bigger differentiators that we've never really seen in market yet. And something worth mentioning here is that, prior to starting Mercator, a lot of the times I saw this problem being solved by having the industry provide information versus having the actual information itself being created as a function of industry interaction. And one of the challenges there is that we would often omit information, or, we have incomplete profiles, or, it'd be difficult to kind of get, companies to willingly give information. And so as a result, you kind of get these haphazard products that can tend to try and cover some of the market information, but not all. And so when we started to look at this problem, we looked at it from the perspective of, okay, everything's got to layer onto a map, just like Phil mentioned. And then that construction activity's got to be able to tell us what's going on in real time, because that real time is, if something's been built 2 years ago and it's telling us that it's a live project now, that's not helpful. And then we have to, on top of that, be able to layer on the what and the how and the who about the projects, the locations, the companies involved. And then ultimately, can we layer on economic information on top of that? And so right now, where Mercator is at in its current state, we're kind of between the where and the what, and we're starting to bring in more information about projects, locations, companies, and ultimately we will span out to being able to bring in economic factors as well, like new policy changes and announcements and things like that. So what I'll do now is I'll shift over into a demo. I've got basically 4 things I want to walk you guys through today. So qualifying and unqualifying your pipeline. We'll start there. We'll talk about prepping for client meetings. We'll talk about reducing windshield time, and then we'll get to how do you get these alerts directly in your inbox. And then that'll be our call for today. So with that, I will hopefully not cause any technical challenges and just shift over to our demo. All right, so I'm pulling up here a Austin Business Journal project. I'm putting on the hat today of a general contractor, and I'm thinking to myself, say, for example, this is a project that was part of my pipeline. I don't have a current pipeline because I'm not a general contractor, and so I pulled a project from the Austin Business Journal for us to review today. So basically what I want you to see here is that we've got a project that they've mentioned. Here's 13614 Metric Boulevard, 238 new multifamily units being built, right? Say this is part of my existing pipeline today. I didn't hear about it in the Austin Business Journal because we all know that by the time it's out in the Austin Business Journal, it's way too late. But this is an opportunity for me to validate my own pipeline and see, is this actually a project? Say I heard it word of mouth. It's a project that I'm interested in. Is it actually worth me pursuing, or is there already work happening on this project that would cause it to be too late for me to engage? So what I would do is I would take, and actually just a time stamping or date stamping, this came out on April 19th, 2024. And I believe the first time this was reported on by the Austin Business Journal was March 20th. So how would we go about looking at this project in Mercator? We'd actually, if we had the address, for example, or we knew the physical location, we'd actually just directly pull it up in Mercator. And so what I can do here is I can click on any parcel of land in Mercator. And what you're seeing today is I'm just in the map environment. I've pulled up the actual plot. I actually typed it in as an address here, at which dropped this pin. And as a result, I'm on this plot of land. When I click on this, I'm going to see on the right-hand side projects that pop up at that location. Now, I'll show you a bit more, but Mercator goes back into the 80s in terms of the data that we have, and I'll show you a bit more about that a little later. Now, if I click on this rezoning project here, I've got all this preloaded so we can move fairly quickly through this demo today, but this will be the project detail page that pops up. Now, keep in mind that we had heard about this in the news March 20th, 2024. Right? What I've got here is I've got the actual parcel of land. I can actually look around. I've got my Google Street View up, so I can actually see the land itself. I can see that this was taken in April of 2024 here. I've got the commercial change that's happening here, so you can see it's going from general office to multifamily moderate density. I've got the lot size as well as the max buildable area here. And then what I can also see is the actual summary of the work. So actually Mercator detected this project January 5th of 2024 when it came out, right? And so we can see all of those events here. We can see that it was brand new at the city submitted on January 5th. So that's when I would have gotten an indicator about it. And then I can also see additional information about this project too. So I can see who's involved. I can see the statuses that it's gone through, the descriptions, and the proposed use. Now, the application is really what's valuable here because we can dig in at the city about what's actually getting built. And so if I click through on that, which I've already done up here, I can go to contact information. I've got Vanessa Mendez here from Dunaway, sorry. That I can look up. I can also see additional information. We've all seen the city pages. And then I've also pulled up some of the context that we have in here in the folder. And so already I'm able to see that this was a rezoning requested to allow approximately 238 multifamily units. And this request consists of the surrounding uses. And so we actually have the context all here. We would have had that on January 5th. We also know that it's Vineyards Austin District. I think this is the right one I pulled up. And then we also have the actual location here as well. And so you can see how very clearly we would have found the information directly from Mercator all the way through all the different materials that we had through the city site, which we're bringing back into Mercator. And then ultimately we'd be able to understand that project very early and get in contact. And so not only does Mercator provide this information, but it also gets you to that contact information. So up here in the right-hand corner, we have the ability to actually click through on these company profiles. When I talk about Mercator, we always talk about I can look at land, but I can also look at companies. And so if I pull up Dunaway, what I'm able to see is all of their projects that they have going on currently. I can actually sort this by active status, so I can see their active projects. I can see who they commonly work with on the left-hand side here. And then I can actually pull up Vanessa's contact information. So yes, I have it at the city, but I also have her email directly here, her office phone number, and her social LinkedIn's. And so very quickly, I've been able to identify a project or qualify my pipeline, make sure that it is at the right stage. I'm still interested in this project. It's got the right characteristics that I'm willing to go after. It's not moved any further along, say, for example, into maybe a design phase or into, actually having a general contractor on the project. So it's still at a viable stage for me, and I can go ahead and action it. I can also come back to Dunaway and say, for example, if I'm interested in these other projects, I can pull up these projects and actually see what else they've got going on. So now I've kind of expanded my capabilities. I've gone from validating my pipeline to I know I can reach out. I have the right contact information. Now I can see all the other work that's going on at that location. So now when I go and speak with this individual, I can speak about not just one project, but potentially 3, 4, 5 projects that I might be able to support them on, or better strategize how I build that relationship over time. And so as a result, if we follow through on this project, again, I got the same information. Here I'm actually seeing additional information. So I've got our site plan applications. I am seeing that we have already started on demolition here. Looks like we're doing a new construction on a commercial building. Looks like it'll probably be another mixed use. And then I've also got the title change as well. So I know who owns that plot of land and when that transaction occurred as well. And so I'm starting to see some of that information come through. This is a much more historic piece of land. So you've got a lot of projects, and you can see here we've got data that goes back into the 80s in terms of work that's happened at this location. So already I've showed you how to qualify and unqualify your pipeline, how to prep for a client meeting. Now let's talk about windshield time, and let's talk about reducing windshield time. Sometimes we have our teams are driving around, they're looking for things. Either, we've seen a post from Phil before where he's posted a picture of a dilapidated building, asked what's going on there. Those are all ways in which we can drive around in the map, and I'll show you an example of that. So what I've done here is I've actually pulled up, I know that we have River City Capital is a developer here in Austin. Now, keep in mind our developer data and the contact information we have around developers, we are starting to build up that data set. So we have a little bit of coverage on River City Capital today. But basically what we're able to do here is, zoom right in. If we were to interact with the map itself and drive around, we can actually see that this is a nice piece of dirt that we found, a nice plot of land. We're just loading the parcel outlines here, which will give us the ability to click around as well. So we can actually click around outside of this project to see if what other developments are going on. That also gives me additional context when I go and speak with this client group, or if there's potentially other projects in and around the project that I'm currently working on, I can bring my assets or bringing my materials to other work in and around the area. I can follow through on this project, which I've done here. I've actually just preloaded this for us, and I can see that project directly here. So nice big plot of land. We can see that here. We can see that these pictures are a little older. So January 2022 is when this was taken. This is new construction, special purpose, East Riverside corridor. We can see that this is a mixed use property here. If we click through on it, we can see that it's a site plan administrative, so it's not a small project. We can see the other companies involved. And then we can also see the application details as well as other work that's happened as well. So we can see that here they had originally applied for the Vargas Phase 1, Phase 2 mixed use. That was withdrawn. They revised their site plan application and applied for a new site plan application. That was 2 weeks ago that it was updated. We originally saw this data actually on, I believe, January 9th. So awaiting update June 8th. June 8th. So it's still a viable project for us potentially at this site plan application stage. And then we can follow through at the city as well. So again, I just pulled up documents that were through that application link. This is where I can understand that in phase one, they'll do 368 units. And so I can start to kind of build up my strategy on how I might approach sharing the work that we've done in the past as an organization, or how we might be able to support them in either phase one or phase two, depending. I can also see the location here, which is great. I'm fact checking Mercator, making sure that the information is correct. And then I'm also seeing here East Riverside Drive Up. We do have a bank of data that we are cross-referencing. A lot of these LLCs that pop up that tend to just be the name of the building with the actual operating name. So that's something that Mercator is working on kind of connecting so that you don't end up having all these LLCs that are just kind of no-name LLCs. And then lastly, you can actually see the building itself. So here I pulled up the drawing package. So you can actually see the site plan, what they intend to build, how they intend to build it, so on and so forth. So very quickly here, I was able to pull up a project, whether that be starting with a company name or clicking around in the map, and then being able to actually see that project through to fruition, and ultimately get into contact with that company and get involved. And so again, contact information. At this stage, we point you to the city, so you have that available through the city site, but you can also come in here, for example, and follow through on those company profiles. And again, that's just kind of taking all of this construction data and looking at it from two angles, right? We look at it from the plot of land itself, but then we also look at it from the company's profile. And so who's involved with who on what project is what we're able to start building out with those company profiles. Lastly, what I'll show you is we looked at a lot of mixed use projects today. And very specifically, we start looking at kind of the makeup of these mixed use projects. We can see the type of category we're interested in. We can see the type of language that's being used. And all of that kind of feeds back into Mercator's powerhouse. So if you were to consider what we just looked at as these are all things that are maybe known to us, how do we find the stuff that's unknown? And as a former data scientist, I've always been asked by leadership, how can we have the data tell us what we should be looking at? And so that's really how we built, the second half of Mercator, which was to make sure that we could build something that would show you how what projects are available in your area. And so if we're focused in on mixed use today, and for example, we can look at industrial, we can look at anything from low-rise multifamily all the way through to light industrial, whether that's public or private projects in Mercator. And what we can do is focus in on specific stages. So what I'll show you very quickly here is as we set up these kind of custom alerts and really get Mercator telling us what we should be looking for, different stages are going to produce different outcomes. For example, if we focus on land title change, and so we were just looking for, who's previously purchased land in the area, we're going to get a lot of names that are LLCs of companies that might be developers that are operating in that area, right? So, for example, 613 Baylor Street is a good example of that's most likely a developer doing work that wants to be kind of covert under an LLC that isn't tied back to their name. But these still give us, understanding that, hey, title has changed and there's probably work happening at that location. If we look at rezoning, we're going to typically find law firms, real estate law firms, right? So here, for example, sometimes we see design firms as well. But here, for example, we're seeing like Dubois, we're seeing Dunaway and Associates. We're seeing Metcalf, for example. And so we're going to be in touch with the law firm, and that's where Mercator is going to kind of point us. We can bring in more information around who potentially owns the land or who might be working on it through kind of more of the applications that we see. But that's really kind of the main type of audience that you'll be seeing via those particular stages. If we get into development permits, this is where we're going to be seeing a lot more of your engineering firms. So Blyle Engineering, we have Civiltude, for example. We see a lot of Kimley Horn pop up. And so I'm just reading the names off the right-hand side here. But this is kind of where what stage and who's the major player that would be submitting for this kind of stage of the project. And so that's where we're tying those projects back to their company profiles. So for our example here, what we're going to do is we're going to set ourselves up with site plan applications. And that site plan application, usually we see about the drawings about 25% completed at this stage. We can get further refined here, and we can say we're not interested in Austin Clean Water Program or small projects. And so just kind of keeping ourselves at those larger projects. Already we've refined down to 267 active projects. We can also use a Mercator predicted field, which is work type. And maybe we want to focus in on new construction here. And so we can further refine down to new construction. So now we're down to 196. And then if we want to get really specific on sector, we can select our commercial sector. This will bring in both mixed use and general commercial. And we can get even further refined here by just including the words mixed use, if that's what we want to get very specific on. And so all the way down from, 267 projects that we originally started with that were active right now, we've got 19 that we can go after. And so this is where we can save this search, and this search will now start to combine all of those projects into our dashboard. And that's the last piece that I'll show you guys today, is just how we can automate the finding of projects, right? And so here, for example, I set up a save search just the other day. That's my Austin mixed use projects, and it's just site applications. You can see already I've got LJA engineering. You can see on the right-hand side when these were last updated. You can see that our data comes in daily, which is very important. You want to know about things as they happen. You can also see when these projects were first started or first created in Mercator. You can simply click on these projects and see the work that's being done so far, as well as any additional information such as location, lot size, et cetera, that'll help you kind of quickly qualify and unqualify these projects. And every single morning, I've set this up so every single morning this gets sent to me in an email. So I can find these projects very quickly, action on them, follow through, and ultimately get to those project detail pages. And I've set up my notifications here to do exactly that, to send them to me daily. And so simply from my email, I'll click through, I'll land on this project detail page. And just like every other project that we went through today, we will be able to come down through this project detail page, understand the project at its current state, and then be able to take action and ultimately connect with whether that be a developer or an engineering firm or the stakeholder on the project that might be relevant to us, as well as seeing any of the historic work that's happened so far at this location to give us the additional context of where they might be in their development process. So far, I've walked us through qualifying, unqualifying our pipeline. I've walked us through how do you prepare for a client meeting. I've walked us through how we reduce our windshield time and how do we get automated alerts directly to our inbox. And all of this is due to looking at the construction industry and looking at what we do on a regular basis, not necessarily from picking up the phone and calling companies and finding out what they've got going on, but rather from the perspective of we create data every single time we interact. So how do we get ahead of new opportunities by intercepting those data points and being able to use that as knowledge to help us, find, how do we spend our time more effectively, more efficiently in terms of identifying new opportunities, or say even submitting the right RFPs, right? Not spending time on projects that might already have, a particular company that might be a front runner, or being able to better position ourselves. And so all of that is what we can do here at Mercator using, a few simple clicks. So I'll pause there. I know we have Q&A today, and so I'll leave some space here for us to do some Q&A, and I will pop us back to our main page.
Chloe, thank you. Wow, that was amazing, and definitely highlighting early and fast for sure. Questions are already starting to pour in. And I know one area that we've talked about a lot is how often, some of our customers share that they find out about a project too late at the permit stage. Wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a common question that we get during demos as well, is, well, permitting is too late. And I hope today what I've shown you is that when we think about permitting, typically we think about building permits. Building permits are a great stage, especially if we're maybe lower down in the funnel in terms of, we want to know which general contractors want a project. That might be a great stage for us to be able to get involved in a project. And we certainly have customers that are further down in kind of the construction life cycle that do use that as a trigger point. But for our general contractors and, the hat we were wearing on today, the earlier stages are a great way for us to find those early projects. Now, keep in mind that, and I think I was once speaking to a large engineering firm who once told me that there's nothing that replaces a great business developer, and that is absolutely true. But if we can make them faster and more effective, that's what the intention of data is, right? And if we can tip you off or make sure that you're calling the right person up at the right time because you're seeing early activity happening on their project, we noticed that those land transfers or land transactions, we noticed that rezoning, we noted that site plan applications are all great stages for getting involved early, because oftentimes, and we just actually did it with one of our customers just the other day, calling up the design firm or the engineering firm, seeing if they're already working with a general, and oftentimes the answer is no. And so there's a great opportunity for you to step in, educate them about what you do best, and then ultimately, be able to start building that relationship and potentially getting into pre-construction with them, designing a great construction managed project.
Perfect. The questions are definitely starting to come in, so I'm going to maybe put two together. And everybody, please continue to ask questions, because if we don't have time to answer them here, we will definitely follow up with answers through email or in another way. So don't hesitate at all. Every question's a great question. So Chloe, there's a question around the markets in Texas, that we have data for, and as well as if I'm an AGC, Austin-AGC member, what does that mean for me in terms of access to becoming a Mercator subscriber?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer that in two parts. The coverage that we have today. So one of the things that Phil and I have been chatting about, especially as we bring the Build It Permits app under the Mercator umbrella, is how can we service the greater Austin area, right? So how do we make sure that we're not just relegated to the actual city limits? And that's something that we're actively working on as a team. We're 3.5 years old, which is early stage construction tech product. And so we're actively building out our coverage and our product to better serve the Texas market. And so right now we're focused on launching the city kind of city proper boundaries in terms of Austin. Houston will launch next, then we'll do San Antonio and DFW, and then we'll come back in and around, and we will support kind of the greater areas around those markets. So about a 70-mile radius around those markets. And already we've been working with local companies that have been helping us to define like what needs to truly be a part of Austin when we think of Austin and servicing that market. And, obviously the surrounding areas of San Antonio and Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth as well. Separately to the Austin Associated General Contractors membership, we are offering a 20% discount on the product to the membership. That's because as a function of working with Phil and working with the AGC, we want to be able to make sure that there's membership value here back to you folks who are, active members within this community. And because we spend a lot of time, working with Phil and learning from the membership, we want to be able to give back. And through that, we are providing a 20% discount on the entire product for the membership. That's part of our relationship with the AGC. That's exclusive to the AGC. And so as a result, you get to access Mercator at a much discounted rate than the general population.
Thank you. Question about data. Where do you get your data?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get our data from a wide variety of places. So Phil talked about at the start of this call, Phil talked about the data coming from open data sources. And that's definitely one of the places that we start. When we think about construction, we actually think about it from the perspective of what are the data sets that get created during the conception stage, when it's just a glimmer in someone's eye, when we're building pro formas. What are the data sets that come through or that get created during the pre-construction phase, the construction phase, the post-construction phase. And so as a result, it really doesn't matter where the data is coming from for us, as long as we can capture it on a regular basis from a reported standpoint. And so that's really critical to Mercator. Everything that you see in the platform today is being pulled in real time from a reported kind of regulatory board in some capacity. So whether that's coming in from the municipalities, from applications being applied for, whether that's coming in from the county, from deeds being transacted and reported, whether that's coming in from real estate companies, so we can track real estate data. That's one of the data sets that we will start bringing in here to track, early tenancy changes. Whether that's coming in from, paid organizations or private entities that we purchase that data from. So we carry a cost when we service a market. We are basically stitching together where can we get that data and where can we create it. And sometimes we do have to create it. For example, we process those documents, those drawing packages you see, to start extracting, the names and the company names and so on, so that we can start to figure out who's working with who in the market and give you a more clear picture. So we're definitely using a multitude of different tools and places where we're pulling that data in to tell the whole story of what's happening on that project and ultimately in the market as well.
Yeah, that aggregation of what is typically totally fragmented in terms of data is got to be a benefit to many, as I'm sure you're already hearing from our customers. Let's see. I think that we have about 2 minutes left. And I'm wondering if you could squeeze in an answer to one more question. And that is, does Mercator.ai serve the residential market? In other words, is there data on residential projects?
Yeah, so we will from a land transaction standpoint. And we've been working with a customer actually who's in the telecommunications space, who's interested in understanding large developments. So from a transaction standpoint, from deeds changing hands, we will see that. However, once it gets into the construction kind of activity stages where we're seeing more applications, we start dropping that information off, simply because one, we don't want to provide personally identifiable information of individuals who are homeowners, but two, because our model doesn't actually it isn't configured for working on residential projects. So like I mentioned before, we will cover low-rise multifamily all the way through to light industrial, but your row houses, your townhouses, your redevelopments, less coverage on those specifically. And with the last few minutes here, Jackie, what I'll shift to is we have a survey at the end of this call. Would love for you guys to answer it. We would love to create more content for the AGC membership. So please do let us know what worked today, what didn't. And then at the same time, we are also launching a customer advisory council. And so it doesn't matter if you're a customer or not, you can help us to shape this product so that it fits best for the Texas market. And so we'll be sharing that around via email after this webinar. But thank you, everyone. I love to see the participation, and I really appreciate everyone's attention today. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, everybody. And just a quick note that this was recorded and will be shared. You'll expect to hear from us shortly with that via email.